Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Greg Ippolito on the line, and he is President and Creative Director of Ippolito Media Arts. Greg, welcome to the show.
Oh, happy to be here, Adam. Thank you.
All right, Greg. So we got a hot topic today. So a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, executives watch this. They're looking for ideas. They're looking for insights. And today's topic, really, how do small and medium-sized businesses compete with the giants? We're a small business, so I'm looking to get some information for ourselves as a smaller media company, and also, of course, for my audience. But before we get into the topic, I'll start with our Mission Matters Minute. So, Greg, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Greg, what mission matters to you?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, there are lots of small and medium-sized businesses out there, some of whom are doing amazing things and really changing the game in their space. But a lot of times they have a hard time getting traction, getting their voices heard, getting the attention they deserve, because they're going up against behemoth competitors that can outspend them 10 to 1, 15 to 1 on media. Our mission is to help those hungry, innovative companies compete toe-to-toe with those behemoths by being smarter, faster, more adaptive, and more creative when it comes to their digital marketing. Yeah. So in a way, we're kind of like applying a David versus Goliath strategy to digital.
Man, I love it. I love bringing mission-based entrepreneurs and executives on the line to really share, why they do what they do, like what gets them up in the morning, what gets them fired up. So great mission there. And let's just start off with your background. So tell me a little bit more about how you got started on this journey, really, to helping small and medium-sized businesses.
Sure. Well, it goes back 25 years or so. Wow. When I first got into the agency world, into the advertising and marketing world. I spent most
of my... Wasn't called digital marketing back then, right?
No. The internet was in its infancy. Mm-hmm. And no one was really thinking about it as much of a marketing tool other than, everyone had to throw up a website and grab their .com. But throughout the 25 years or so I've been doing this, I spent most of my time on the agency side. And IMA is only 8.5 years old. So before I put out my own shingle, I'm working for these agencies, and one after another, consistently, they were always going after the biggest brands they could. Naturally, number one, they're big meal tickets. Number two, it helps you get more business. When you go on your website and you have Nike, Disney, Apple, as clients, people know, and it gives you instant credibility. Yeah. So what I realized as I got kind of older and more mature and started to look at the growing opportunity in the SMB space was, number one, for an agency, just it's smart business to tap into this relatively not untapped, but much lesser tapped source of revenue. And B, again, like I said at the top, some of these companies, if you look closely enough, are just doing incredible things, not only innovative in a business sense, but innovative in the sense of what it does to push the world forward in a positive way. And they get not ignored, but certainly they don't have people banging down their door. So, I'm in the greater Philadelphia region. Every agency around here has been banging down Comcast's door forever because they want a slice of that pie. No one's paying attention to ABC company down the road, even though they might be, doing incredible things. So I had kind of that eureka moment where, like, wait a minute, if I can put my focus on that, not only can I, and again, this was very early on, but if I can find a way to be useful to these companies, not only can it be a great launching pad for the agency, but I can do a real service for these people that, get virtually ignored by the big and very talented agencies that are out there.
It's so interesting that you say this because as I look at, some of the people that are attracted to our platform, the interviews we do, and, as a media company, we're always, they're told, okay, you have to go get this particular type of interview because you'll get this type of click. And I'm just like, my heart's with the small business owner. I
Right.
like people that like helping the small business owners. I mean, this is what moves us forward. So some of the things, like, I mean, as nice as it would be to have an interview with Elon Musk, it's like, okay, that's one side of things, but I'm really interested in like the person that started his part of the space journey in his garage, and he has this patent on this particular piece that'll be in a rocket that's going out there. I mean, I want to talk to that guy because that's a
Right.
crazy, those have been some of the most memorable stories. So I get it. I understand why you went after this, and we're definitely on the same page of like really wanting to help small to
Yeah.
medium-sized businesses succeed. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure. And if I could just add,
Yeah, yeah.
you have to know who you are as an
Mhm.
entrepreneur. I don't think I didn't completely know that in my 20s, even in my early
Yeah.
30s. As I got a little older, I started to know what was important to me.
Mhm.
When you know who you are and you know what your mission is and you know what you're trying to accomplish, you can make some difficult decisions. So to
Yeah,
your very
yeah,
point, when you decide, you know what, I'm going to go all in on small to medium-sized businesses, you can't kind of play both ends. So
yeah,
yeah, I am very aware that for our own marketing, I'm never going to have a Nike up on our website. I'm not going
yeah.
to have it. But I know that the opportunity is there. I know that our mission is helping. We know that it's working.
Mhm.
Um, and it kind of validates the risk, what seemed like risky decisions in the moment. Like another risky decision we
Yeah.
made was, talking about instant credibility. We do not apply for awards.
Yeah.
We did early on, and throughout my career, I've earned a bunch of them, but
Mhm.
it is such a drain on an agency. And we're
Mm.
relatively small. We only have 12 employees at this
Yeah.
point. Go and say during, agency season, we're going to take half the staff and dedicate them to applying to awards. Well, then you have to neglect your
Yeah.
clients in order to, something has to give. So we decided
Mhm.
we're just not doing that. We don't have the bandwidth to do it. Of course, the counterbalance to that is we're not going to have awards to put on our site.
Yeah.
But we can make the argument that we don't do that because we dedicate every minute at the workplace to you,
Yeah.
the client. And that's true. So if that is something that a prospective client is
Mhm.
willing to hear and they say, yeah, I get that. I like that decision and that's good for me. And
Yeah.
this is potentially a good relationship. Great. If they see no awards and bounce, I got to be able to live with that. So again, it comes down
Yeah.
to tough decision making, but when you know what you are and what you're trying to accomplish, when you know your mission and you know what matters, you can make those decisions more confidently.
All right, I want to switch gears here a bit. So, and go further into today's topic. So, when you're thinking about helping small and medium-sized businesses compete with the giants, I mean, big task, big mission. I mean, where do you want to start with this one? There's a lot there.
Yeah. And when you get into specific industries,
Mhm.
obviously, there are a lot of nuances there. I think let's start with our decision to go exclusively into helping B2B marketers.
Yeah.
So, I have a pretty expansive background. I did everything from automotive advertising to pharmaceutical
Yeah.
to consumer electronics. I made the shift into B2B about 10 years ago.
Mm.
And one of my decisions to do that was number one, like the small to medium sized clients, I think B2B is generally neglected. I think a lot of advertising agencies and people who want to get into advertising, young
Yeah.
advertisers, want to work on the consumer side. It just feels like more
Mhm.
fun. But because of that, I think there's a dearth of creativity within
Mm.
B2B. Anything can be made fun and entertaining and informative. And with B2B, to cut through the clutter, you have a lot of opportunity there because so many B2B marketers are cut
Mhm.
and dry and think very pragmatically in terms of how to present their argument for why you should buy this thing.
Yeah.
All decisions are emotional decisions, even from the most pragmatic CFO or CEO. There's an emotional thing that thrust forward and you turn your emotional decision
Mm.
into a very rational one in retrospect. So the more we can empathize with the people we're trying to reach,
Mhm.
the more we can kind of pull those levers. And I know we're going to get into empathy down the road, but With regard to B2B, I'll, I'll tell a little story, not so much a story, but a repeating anecdote.
Mm-hmm.
Before I opened my own agency, I was the creative director. I oversaw a lot of different teams.
Yeah.
And whenever we got a B2B client, or whenever we got a client or a project that my creative team deemed as boring, because it was just a brochure, or just an insert, or a sales insert or something, and they would come to me and complain like, if I was working on the such and such campaign, or if I had something basically sexier to do, I could really flex my creative muscle, but you're sticking me with this. And I always said the same thing, which was, if you can't find what's interesting about this product or this service, if you can't develop a sales insert or a brochure or whatever, is at hand to make it compelling to the audience, you're not doing your job, or at least you're not working hard enough to figure it out. Yeah. Everything is interesting. And our job, the great Bill Birnbach from Doyle, Dane Birnbach said, I'm paraphrasing, but our job is to bring the dead facts to life. You need to do your homework. You need to do your research. You need to understand your audience and what drives them. And if you got that down, you're going to find something that's be like, oh, you know what? This is what I'm going to focus on. This is what I'm going to say. And that's going to be really interesting to this member of my audience. And that's what's going to make action happen. So.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say this, because on the B2B side, I feel like, and if you're out there on the B2B marketing side, don't get mad at me, but I feel like sometimes people get a little lazy with it. Like they don't try to think out like what else they can build with certain things. Lazy is the wrong word. Sometimes they don't tap into their creativity, as you mentioned before. Like they feel like, I have another brochure, I have another thing. And when they have that, they're thinking about maybe what they've done in the past. So if they have one SaaS client, it's like, okay, well, we can do this, this, and this. Where if there's some creative, like if you're going B2C, then all of a sudden it's like the world of possibility exists. It's like, can we do this? Can we do that? And so I think the people that get it right to B2B have an opportunity to really like stand out. And I don't mean just the marketers, by the way. I mean the companies that get it right as well.
That's exactly right. And that's why when we see these opportunities in the marketplace, when we come across, as I mentioned before, these small companies, smaller companies that have created these products or created these processes to solve problems, and you're like, wow, like people, that's usually when I'm sitting down with one of those prospects before we even start working together. I get excited because I'm like, people need to know about this. Like business is money is money, but like I feel this drive of like, we got to get people to, if people knew about this, it would change the game for them. But I think you're dead right about I don't want to use the word laziness, the sort of regression to the mean when you're talking about B2B. And I think
much more accurate. That is what it is. It is a regression to the mean.
More diplomatic?
No, it's more accurate. It's more accurate because I don't believe anybody's inherently like everybody wants to do their job, right? In my opinion, in the creative space, like they want to get results for their clients. That's the point. That's their heart. That's what drives them to get into the business in the first place.
Totally. And I think that regression really comes from two main places. One, we said before, they believe their audiences to be entirely pragmatic. Therefore, they believe that the only argument they can make, the only pitch they can make for their products or services are feature benefit type of things. They have a hard time getting to the point where they believe that an emotional, and by emotional, I don't mean, a 30-second spot where like a grandmother is dying and people, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about humor. I'm talking about like eyeball popping, wow, or practical applications in a real world setting where rather than just listing, a bunch of bullet point features or benefits, you're actually seeing a person use it and get that smile on their face. Like, wow, my job just got so much easier. Being able to make it real. The second reason I believe is that we're in the era and have been in the era of big data for some time. And it's sort of a double-edged sword. So on the one hand, we have more, again, going back to 25 years ago when I started this, and your understanding of an audience was like a media kit or, an email list that you bought that was cleansed, right? Like that was as good as you like, or audience personas. Now, obviously, the granular detail you can get in the digital sphere is just absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
As a citizen, I'm kind of horrified. As a marketer, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But the tricky part is that, especially on the B2B side, we tend to look at data points as insights. You'll even hear people use the two terms synonymously. They are not. A piece of datum is two things by its nature. One, it exists in the past, right? And number two, it defines an action that was taken. So both of those things, if you look at like the results of an A/B split test and say, oh, add A, beat add B, and you decide from that add A is what the audience prefers, let's run with that, without thinking about why did they react to that in that moment, in that context, back in August when we ran it. How have things changed now? How's the culture shifted? How's the marketplace shifted? And again, that was then, this is now. So what we like to talk about is using data as pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, sort of. And once you don't need to create a crystal clear view of the audience, but you need to put enough of the right pieces together where a vision starts to form and you start to understand, you start to get that empathy for the prospective audience, what they're all about, what makes them tick, and then you can put that together. And the problem is, again, on the B2B side, thinking very pragmatically, it's very easy to fall into the trap of that's what worked, so let's keep going with it until 3 months later you're asking yourself, why doesn't it work anymore?
No, that's helpful. And Greg, I want to switch it up a bit. So let's shift focus slightly. So we've talked a little bit about IMA in the sense that we know you work with marketing for mid-sized and small businesses. Tell us a little bit more about the company overall.
Sure. Well, we can think about it in terms of long-term strategy and also in terms of sort of tactical approach. So long-term strategy-wise, most of our clients, as I mentioned, are in the B2B space, and they tend to be selling products or services that come with some degree of risk, right? We're not selling T-shirts and hats here. We're selling, enterprise level software in some cases, where if someone decides to make a move away from what they're using to something new, you're talking about not only an enormous amount of money, but in some cases, you have to bring people, IT people to install that software, training for the staff. It's a big headache. And if it goes wrong, it can cost you your job, not to mention whatever damage to the company. So the sales cycle for most of our clients is relatively long. Right. So what we're trying to do is not only make these smaller companies visible, but also trying to target their best fit prospects. Obviously, you can't target everybody. So if you think of it in terms of like old school deciles, like here's your most likely, audience, here's your second most likely, and start with the first and work down. We want to hook the right people. We want to make sure that we give them engaging content while at the same time watching very closely for how they're reacting to get nuanced understanding of what makes them tick and what they're ignoring. And then over a span, whatever the sales cycle is, 6, 8, 12, 18 months, we want to make sure that we're gathering information and nurturing them with engaging content so that by the time they're ready, they've gathered enough information to raise their hand and invite our client to participate in an RFP or whatever the case is. Not only are they part of that consideration set, but they're coming in as the ones to beat. And a lot of times we can go back and look at the behavior of the audience, of the individual who opted in, and say to the sales team before they even have the first conversation, hey, here's what they've been looking at the last 9 months. Here are the YouTube videos they've downloaded. Here's by topic, the type of content they're more interested in, so that when sales makes that first outreach, they know exactly what to talk about. They have again, putting those pieces together to form that vision. They have a pretty well-formed vision of who they're talking to, instead of having to call and say, hey, how can I help? Because no salesperson wants to start a conversation like that. So that's kind of the macro. At the tactical level, really it comes down to three major things that comprise 85-90% of what we do, which is search marketing, both paid and organic, and that's inclusive of SEO strategy, SEO execution, AdWords, display, remarketing, and any combination therein. So that's the one bucket. The second is social media marketing, which is, again, everything from full strategies and content calendars and AMAs and social media takeovers and paid, organic, everything soup to nuts. We have some clients for whom we come in and we support. They might have an in-house social media team, but they're looking for us to kind of amplify what they're doing. We have other clients that are very small. They might have a marketing team of 3 people, and they look to us to do everything for them, like as an external agency for them. And then the third big thing is what we call a digital brand activation. And we can get into that in a little bit. I know that was one of your other questions you wanted to ask, but you can think of that in the most simplistic way as sort of the bringing together of all of the other 2 broad categories I mentioned, plus whatever else makes sense, native, programmatic, et cetera, and creating these immersive online destinations where you can really make a big splash for your brand or your product or whatever else. So again, those 3 things, search marketing, social media marketing, and digital brand activations, that comprises the majority of what we do. But we're also a full service digital firm. We do digital branding. We do website and mobile app development and audience research, soup to nuts, anything that needs to be handled under the digital space. We take care of it for our people.
Tell me a little bit more about the brand activation piece, because I feel like that's something that we don't talk about enough.
Yeah, it's it's something that I think is kind of an untapped resource, and we may have even coined the term. I hope we did. If we didn't, I think we were very close to first. But if you think about brand activations, which were really starting to, and I mean like IRL brand activations, which were really starting to take off in the years before COVID hit. And you think about what a good brand activation is and what it does. You physically walk into this space that is like its own universe that's built by a brand, and you can interact with things, and you can, and it's highly influential. What we tried to do, but the problem with it, if you want to call it a problem, again, for the behemoth companies, it's not a problem at all. For the smaller companies, how do you build something like that without hemorrhaging your entire marketing budget? How do you drop into South by Southwest and build a real life brand activation? So we tried to replicate that experience online. So we create a destination microsite or landing page where that is like walking into an activation. And then we pull all of the digital levers necessary to get people there, get them engaged, get them interacting, bring more people on because they're talking about it as they're inside that space. So it's kind of a tough thing to talk about because like an IRL brand activation, they come in all different shapes and sizes and forms. But in the most simplistic way, you can think about creating a campaign destination site or page, and then using all of getting very creative about how to leverage search and social and native to alert people that it's happening, drive them in, and then once they're in there, increase their engagement, get them talking to drive ancillary traffic back in. And it just becomes a great way to launch a brand, generate leads, generate buzz, et cetera. So it's a really cool thing. And a lot of people don't even know it exists. So usually when we engage with clients, they'll come to us with a particular problem that they have. Can you help us, amplify our social media, or we need an SEO strategy or whatever. But usually before too long, we start talking about digital brand activations.
And so I guess taking it one step further on brand activations, like what are some good uses of this? So now let's just say somebody's listening to this right now and they're thinking, okay, well, I haven't quite heard of this concept, but how does that apply to me? Like, how could I use it at my company? Like, what are some good uses, or how should people be framing their thought process around how to actually use this?
Right. There are a number of different ways. So I mentioned before, product launch, that's always good. If you need to launch a product, you need to make a big deal about it, particularly if it's something really innovative that's going to help your end customers, and your budget is small, right? So you can't go and buy thousands of square feet at a trade show and make a big splash. this would be a great way to do it, because we can micro target your best fit audiences online through LinkedIn if you're B2B, through some other social channels, and drive them back to experience this online thing. The other thing too is one of the, like, going back to, I started my career, I didn't mention this before, I started my career in direct response. So it's and then I wound up going, the agency after that was more of a branded direct agency. So I had this weird, I made my bones with direct, and in a way, social media, when you're promoting a product, and search marketing also when you're doing a direct product promotion, are very much sort of branded direct tactics when you think about it. It's just the modern version of it. So what we're doing with digital brand activations is not only bringing those people in and engaging them, because the more time on site you spend, the higher the engagement, the higher the likelihood of you taking action, and action leads to sale, right? So we want to make sure that we're driving that engagement, but also giving them lots of opportunities to raise their hand or opt in or download something else cool, some sort of high value content, so that we are opening the door for our client sales teams to have a conversation. And again, a conversation that is informed by all the data that we can gather during the process of running these things.
So you've mentioned the theme kind of multiple times in the interview, and it just stuck out to me. So the word empathy. So it sounds to me like that's kind of woven in what you're doing, how you help your clients, your marketing style. I mean, talk to us a little bit about the importance of empathy. I don't know, in marketing, business, I mean, just in general in life, I guess.
Yeah. And I think it does affect all of those things. So, I talked before about avoiding the mistake of data equaling an insight, right? So data, the data that's available to us now can tell us a lot about the behaviors of audiences, but we can't lose sight of what was the thinking, what were the emotional triggers that preceded that action. And that is something that we're constantly chasing after here at IMA. How can we start to put these pieces together? And a lot of it, it's not merely, this is why I think the futurists who are prognosticating that, the robots are going to take over in the next 3 years. We'll see. I know AI is amazing. But I still think that technology and the human mind still have to work very much hand in hand. So to give you for instance, when we get results back from a campaign or a month of social media activity, and we start to look at the actual results, we're always asking ourselves as a team, well, why did this happen? Right. And then we can't answer that. But what we can do is, if you bring, 12 really smart people, some of whom are writers, some of whom are designers, some of whom are online marketing geniuses, people who do keyword targeting. And so you have different types of minds, a real diversity of thought in the room. And you start asking around and saying, why do you think this happened? And we try to put together the 3 to 4 best hypotheses that we can as a group. And then that gives us something to test next time. All right, if we believe any of these 3 or 4 things might be true, let's start to test and find out. And then after another test, and maybe one more after that to validate the results, if they back up the first thing, we can know. And with statistical confidence, we can validate a hypothesis. That means that instead of just that direct one-to-one, data's telling me this on an action, therefore that's the action to do forever. If you can say, all right, let's look at it as more of a long-term project. Data told me this, that might mean this, let me test that. And again, then you can get to a point where the best practices that you put together aren't just a list of tactics or approaches that a team can use, but the appendix of that best practices document says, here's why. Here's what your audience is thinking. And here's how we know it, because we tested this, this, and this. Once you can really understand why the people are doing what they're doing, then you don't have to rely on A or B anymore. You can get creative with a true understanding of who you're reaching and what's going to motivate them to action, or what's going to persuade them to opt in for that webinar, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And like you said, this isn't just business, this is life. If you're always talking at people and you're not really understanding, you're relying on their facial expressions or their body language to let you know, oh, I'm boring them, or, oh, yeah. But if you can really understand what, and again, your best friend or your spouse or your mom or your brother, these people are not the same every time you sit down with them. Their lives are always changing, and you're not aware. If you can be more empathetic with what's going on with them, and sometimes it's as simple, now we can't do this in business, it'd be too easy, but sometimes it's as simple as asking, like, hey, what's going on? What have you been up to? And if they respond in a way that maybe you could tell you need to dig a little more, you can do that. But caring about what the audience, whether it's again your parent or your prospective client, caring about what they're thinking, what they're going through, and trying to reach out to them in a way that's going to help, just on a human level. That's not only the key to great relationships in life, I think it's the key to great relationships in business, because and again, even in between, not just you reaching out as a marketer to a target audience, but the way you interact with your clients. What are they going through? You can sense when a client is really under pressure. A month ago, they weren't feeling this way there. And you could say, like, oh, hey, what's going on? How can I help? And if you really mean it and you're willing to do it, man, that, to have someone that's not even in your organization that's willing to step up and go the extra yard to help you through a problem, that it goes a long way to building a relationship. And it just feels good too. Going back to the original mission, like, one of the reasons we want to help these smaller companies is because they're doing great things. They could do great things for the world, and they need the help. And we can go in there and make money and run a successful company and do that also. Well, same thing. If we can help the individuals that we work with and their eventual customers in the process, it's like a win-win-win. So I'm very thankful to be in this position. And it's just all a matter of just setting your brain the right way as you get up in the morning and go about your day.
I love it, Greg. And I agree that people need your help. So it's awesome what you're doing. I just have to ask. So what's next? I mean, what's next for you? What's next for IMA?
Yeah. Well, in the short term, we see a lot of things shifting in the digital space, especially in social media, but there's some interesting search things happening too. Especially at the intersection of search and social, which I won't get too much into, but the recent switch to Meta, right? There's a whole lot underneath of that. There's really nothing that's going to change on Facebook in the short term, but what it could mean for social media in the next 2 to 5 years. I'm imagining a near future where social media is done partially, or maybe eventually completely, as a virtual reality experience. That's going to change a lot about how we think about engagements, how we think about leveraging it. It also, and it's funny that this happened because we were thinking about digital brand activations in this way. How can VR help create that? So, but the one stumbling block is, if you don't have a world that's used to going online with a headset, then it's going to really limit your audience. But if you're looking, again, if 5 years from now, people jump on Facebook with an Oculus, then that's going to be a total game changer in terms of what a digital brand activation becomes, right? Because now you do feel physically in that world. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. In terms of IMA, I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but I'll admit it in front of your entire audience. We don't really have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. Most of the new clients we bring on come in through relationships. Someone calls and says, I have someone who works for this great company and they're really struggling. Can you help? Sometimes we take on 4 or 5 new clients a year. Sometimes it's one. It kind of comes as it comes. And I think just the reputation we've built and the clients that we've collected and work for, they're always willing to put us in contact with you. So business has grown really well, just kind of organically. So, as we need to staff up, we staff up. But I don't have any. The one thing I do not want to do, I will. I'm just figuring this out now live. The one thing I do not want to do, because it would go against everything that that this company stands for, is become one of the agencies I used to work for with, a 50-person creative department and a 40-person account services department. And, where I am in the corner office, relatively unaware of the individual projects. We have different dedicated teams for each client, but I'm always involved. I always want to be personally involved, and I want our clients to know that they don't need to go to their project manager if they have a question for me. They can go to me directly. They can call me. They can call me on Saturday. I'm very hands-on. So I want to keep the company, we continue to grow, but there's a point at which the growth would be prohibitive to the type of agency we want to run. So that's something I got to keep in mind. But aside from that, we're just going to keep on trucking. So to speak. Use a Grateful Dead reference.
I'm in. I love it. And big fan of what you're doing in the feel and the fabric of what you're trying to do over at IMA and what you're executing on, even in things like empathy. I mean, thinking about having that personalized touch, this brand activation concept, all the things you're mentioning. So you're still innovating, you're still moving on, or still pushing forward. Sure. So that being said, Greg, if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more, and to connect with your team, I mean, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, well, like I just mentioned, connect with me personally. We don't have a B team here at IMA. I'm always accessible. And my partner, Bob Clemens, who runs the online marketing team, is accessible. So you want to get in touch with me? Greg, Greg, at IMA314.com or call me, 215-421-3034. That's my personal cell. And we can have a conversation.
Awesome. Well, Greg, really appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing more about your mission and really why you do what you do. And to the audience, if this is your first time tuning into the show, just letting you know, we feature mission-based business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives. And our goal here is really to amplify their stories and to figure out like why they do what they do, like what gets them up in the morning, what gets them fired up. Our hope is that you get ideas from this that you can put into place and put into action to help you on your journey. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and make sure that you come back. We have many more mission-based business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives coming up, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Greg, really, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your background, your mission, and all you're doing over at IMA.
Likewise, Adam. Pleasure's mine. Thank you.